Hi, and welcome to another episode of BTS Podcast. This is your host, Lene Cook. And on this episode, I am really excited to talk to Nehemiah Cisneros. He is an MFA candidate at UCLA. He's a painter, and we're going to get into what that means and what his experience in getting a fine art education has been like. And yeah, I guess we're gonna get into it. Hi, Nehemiah. Thanks for being on.
Oh, yeah. I didn't really have much of a choice.
Oh, I think it's also important for you to know that Nehemiah is also my boyfriend, which is why we are recording this together in Maine, sharing a mic and headphones. So Nehemiah, you are wrapping up. In fact, you have finished your second year at UCLA as an MFA candidate. And I think where we can start off is applying and applying to MFA programs, what that was like for you, what you learned, recommendations. What was your experience like applying for MFA programs?
I've been preparing since 2016 when I wanted to go back to college.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember in community college in 2016, I was talking to my professors there and I was asking them about graduate schools, and they could already see that I was thinking even ahead of finishing an undergraduate degree. So I kind of saw that it was going to be like a 6-year plan of, doing the credits that I needed for foundation year in community college, and then the 3 extra years that I had to do an undergraduate in order to be able to actually even apply for an MFA. So, of course, you need to have an undergraduate degree if you want to go get an MFA. So those whole 5 years prior from Santa Monica College through Kansas City Art Institute, where I received my undergraduate degree, I had all those 5 years to compile information on which graduate schools that I wanted to go to. And I think the best advice that I could give is that I wouldn't say there's any best place to go because they all have great alternatives. I think that when deciding where to go and where to apply, it's where do you want to be and what type of artist are you? For me, coming from Los Angeles, the question I was asking is, if I go to UCLA, I'm going to become a Los Angeles artist. If I go somewhere like Yale, then I'll most likely end up working on the East Coast.
Yeah.
So it was really like an Odyssean journey back to Los Angeles when I was leaving Kansas City. A hero's return home. I think that's what I said in my interview with UCLA's professors, is that it's time for me to come home. So yeah, when you're deciding where to apply, just ask yourself, where do I belong? And
yeah,
it should be simple.
Do you think some of those questions, and sorry, do you mind leaning forward a little bit so the mic picks you up more? Sorry. That's perfect. Okay, so when people are asking themselves this question, a lot of times people who are finishing up their undergrad or starting undergrad, they're fresh out of high school. And so those might not be questions they have the answers to quite yet. And you prior to going to Kansas City, you don't lived in LA your whole life, correct?
Yes.
So do you feel like going somewhere that you're not familiar with is was helpful in you forming as an artist and your approach now versus if you would have stayed and gone somewhere locally?
Totally. I got
You can say no, you don't have to go with it.
It's totally.
Okay.
I think if you're somewhere all of your life, you have a perspective that's very enclosed. As big as Los Angeles is, it started to feel small to me. And I wasn't making work about Los Angeles when I was living in LA. But in order to have a view of LA, I had to get on the outside of it to see exactly what it was, and even to see what my identity was. So when I did move to the Midwest for those 3 years that I spent there between 2018 and 2021, I was able to have an objective view of it. And so I think definitely it's, what's the saying, you have to get away from it in order to come back to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had an appreciation for things that I didn't even realize when I was there. And as for age differences, I say journal. That's the best way, and I think that is a activity that most teens, it's a cliche, you know, like yeah. So
maybe like the current teens not so much, you know, because like current teens have grown up with like
and put in
therapy
their
tools.
notes on their devices.
That's true. Yeah.
Or like their log history and they're talking to people.
Yeah, in a Google Doc.
Yeah, or yeah, something.
Okay, so Diet Virginia Woolf on Instagram, who is a journalist and a pretty sick writer, and is also has like done work in art. She asked about your thoughts around an MA versus an MFA and like what your thoughts are.
Well, I can only really speak on like what I know about the difference between like a BA and a BFA.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know at UCLA, when students graduate from there, they graduate with a BA,
right?
Not a BFA. I think that's more well-rounded. It seems like the students there, when they're graduating with a BA, their curriculum and their syllabuses are more diverse than it was for me going to a private art school like Kansas City Art Institute, where you're going there to be a painter.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. I think
well, and I will say the MA program was 1 year and the MFA program is 2 years that she got accepted to. So she's like torn between, you know, like taking just 1 year or 2 years.
She has the option to do both.
She has that option to do either.
But it's an MFA.
Yeah, it's an MFA or
in what?
I don't know.
Well, those type of things are very important to know. Yeah,
I have failed you, friend.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they can let me know.
Should I have her DM you?
Or whenever we hang out.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that the specifics, I'm a very microscope person.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am very aware. Okay, so is there anything that you wish you would have known when you were applying for MFA programs?
I was obsessed with the application process, as I am with whatever process I am in now. I guess thesis would be what I'm obsessed with, writing my thesis, preparing for my thesis exhibition in the fall of 2024. But to backtrack to the application process, I spent a year working on my application during my senior year. Well, I knew I was going into undergraduate at KCAI to make my portfolio to apply to graduate school. So I had to fight against making work with what I consider finished pieces during a time when a lot of students are being encouraged by their professors to experiment, or not even really to experiment, to do the assignment a certain way. Right. So when this type of school that I went to, which changed my comprehension on what it means to draw perceptually from nature, from life, that sophomore year was all spent forgetting whatever aesthetics that I acquired in the 31 years that I was on this earth prior, and just beginning anew. But then in junior year, I spent junior year and senior year making a portfolio work. So I knew this was what I was going to be showing in my graduate portfolio. So every piece, it wasn't a homework assignment, even though it was given a prompt from the professors. I was like, this prompt is a springboard to something that's going to launch me into graduate school. So the application process for me started in junior year, probably when one of my professors sat down and said, "Oh, it looks like you could get into graduate school." And I was like, "No shit. Like, that's what we were doing this for." And I think that was with my first painting of my Violent by Design series, Violent by Design 1. So I tend to number my paintings a name, and then the series numerically 1 through whatever.
Like comics.
I like comics, like movies. Yeah.
Cinematic.
A franchise is kind of how I look at it.
Yeah.
So the application began in junior year. The writing for it, which I love to write, as we've been writing while we've been in Maine.
It's true, we have been.
The writing for it, thankfully, in undergrad, they introduced like writing an artist statement and have classes like the school that I went to had classes like a professional practice where they show you kind of like the training wheels of how to apply to residencies, like the Oxbow or Yale, Norfolk, which I applied to both, but due to COVID, we weren't able to go to Yale, Norfolk, even though the school nominated me.
Wait, why weren't you able to go? Because of COVID?
Because
they just weren't allowing new students?
Well, it was right when COVID happened, so you weren't able to interact with people.
Got it.
Yeah. So the application process for the writing began junior year through senior year. And I knew I wanted to go to Cranbrook. That was like the school that I really want to go to, even since 2016 when I was at Santa Monica College, because one of my favorite artists at the time, I knew that he had gone to Cranbrook, and it was kind of like that scene like in a Rocky movie where like the boxer would put his picture of like his hero on the wall. And I remember I went to a portfolio day while I was in Santa Monica College to look at what undergraduate I should go to, and I met the Cranbrook lecturers who were, you know, doing recruitments for graduate school. And I was like, oh, that's where the artist that I like went. And they looked at my portfolio and said, well, give us a call when you're done with undergrad. And so I was like, okay, I'm already done looking. So I just had that in the back of my mind. I had the little Cranbrook book, and that was my goal. Of course, like, you know, UCLA and Yale are some of the most coveted. They're like the Apple, Google, like major names. So I knew that I had a chance to get into Cranbrook, and I knew that it would be life-changing to get into any of the top ones that a lot of the artists that, you know, are my friends now, fortunately, come from. So I had it in the back of my mind, but I wasn't like, oh, I'm definitely going to get in.
Right.
Yeah. So I knew I was going to apply to Cranbrook. So when it was time to actually apply to Cranbrook, I was like, well, I can apply to a few other places. So I decided to throw my hat in the ring for UCLA.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. I figured like have a genuine reason to go somewhere. Like I had a genuine reason to go to Cranbrook because I was fanboying over this one artist. And I'd already been talking to some of the artists in residence there. And going back home to LA was a genuine enough reason. It was more so about the fact of that's where I'm from, and having a Los Angeles artist in a program in LA means a lot more than transplants being in there, at least to me.
Well, I think it also means a lot more to you because you're home. You know, I think anyone would feel that way. Like you go away, you come back, and like who doesn't want to come back home, like doing bigger things than what they were doing when they were home?
I just wanted to just do whatever I was going to do. It didn't matter if it was bigger or smaller.
But you were coming back because it's an option. Like a lot of times people don't want to go home because it's like, oh, that's like not. And like, I think also
I was ready to come home.
You were ready to come home.
Because I was definitely running away from whatever I was running away from to go to Kansas City, and needed to get out of Los Angeles. Like I said, in order to like see who I was. So yeah, those two, I definitely had a reason to. And then of course my professor was like, well, you're really good at art, you should apply to Yale. And I don't know if you've ever been on Yale's website, but it's like a 90s GeoCities type of very hard. It's hard to figure out like who the professors are.
GeoCities.
Yeah. And I didn't really have any other reason besides like that's where a lot of great artists come out of, and great artists teach.
No one's gonna like turn up their nose at the name Yale.
Well, so when searching for like what is my reason besides it being great,
right?
You know?
Yeah.
I didn't really have a genuine reason, and it probably reflected in the interview.
That makes sense.
Yeah, when I was interviewed like with UCLA and with Cranbrook, it both like came through in whatever I was saying, that oh, this makes sense.
Yeah, it's more than just a name.
Yeah,
Like
because it's
yeah.
more than just a student-teacher relationship. Like, it really is a family. And
So then in that process, like, you apply, then once you make it through like the general sort of written application, then they bring you in for an interview
most of the time,
and
yeah.
then make their choices.
Most of the time, yeah. I mean, from my experience, I submitted an application. Yale's was the shortest. UCLA's, it's about 3 essays and about 20 images. Submitted the application, and pretty quickly I got a email back for an interview, which all of the department in painting is present for the interview. Usually it's members from the department, even though with Yale, when it was time for the interview, I didn't know who it was on the screen. It was kind of like an improv. It's like, oh, hey, I wasn't expecting to talk to you, but now that I am, especially over Zoom too. It was like,
it's kind of wild.
It's like an episode of Seinfeld.
Totally.
At least it's a comedy, not a
but
horror.
Like chat roulette style.
Yeah, like Omegle or
current.
Yeah, but
so then, but okay, I'm going to interject here, because I think also something that I've seen just from like, you know, knowing what you've been up to and stuff, like you were just teaching for 2 weeks during UCLA summer program, and something you encouraged even like high school level students to do was like to be taking each class as like an opportunity to come up with pieces for your portfolio. And I think that's something a lot of people like sort of get in the hamster wheel of school, and they just see like it's just an assignment, you know what I mean? Like people will like do their assignment to like check a box versus being like, oh, let me take this seriously, and like how can this help besides just like a grade and like turning it in, like how can this like propel what I want out of life forward, you know? And I think that that's something that's like admirable about your approach, and then also rad about the way you teach, because like, you know, you were just teaching and you had them all write artist statements, you know, very open to new technology, like open to like chat GPT helping like spur some ideas.
Well, I didn't encourage it. I said I wouldn't punish for it.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah, and it was more of like a joke.
Well, but I think also, I think for even adults, like this isn't like for people like, this isn't specific for people in school, but I think for adults, like a lot of us get hung up when we're applying for grants or awards or like whatever. And it's like, why not just let it help you? Like, I know I've put prompts in there. Can you scoot closer to the mic a little bit? Yeah, that's good. To help spur some like, oh, that is a good way of framing stuff, because it is really weird and hard to talk about ourselves. Like you have gotten used to it, but I find it weird to talk about myself. And like,
I love talking about myself.
I know, and I'm so happy for you.
Yeah, I love talking about other people too. And I think when I'm talking about students versus like the idea of me saying like, oh, I want you to make a portfolio piece, like with anything that you're doing for long periods of time, there's different headspaces that you go into. I mean, I'm still a student, and I think even after you graduate, you're still learning and then teaching as well, like metaphorically. I think that while I'm working on a painting, there's moments when I feel like a fine artist, you know, but like the actual artist, exhibiting artist, like all of that great stuff. But then there's moments that I feel like I'm a jobber, like a 9-to-5, or just clocking in and totally on autopilot, and I hate my job and I hate my coworkers, and I'm just there, just stirring the paint, you know, just I can't wait till 6 o'clock, you know, right? And then there's moments when I feel like I'm the student where I have to do this in order for a grade, for the cookie, you know, for the pat on the head, you know, and it goes back and forth, and that's different like levels of like ego and things shifting. And I think that's what's great about it. I mean, I feel bad for people that meet me on days when I'm the jobber, but usually it goes between student and rarely the fine artist. I rarely feel like that like him. Okay. But
I think that's important though, because I think some people, when they're like creating art, was something that holds a lot of people, myself sometimes included, back, is we have this idea that like we should always feel inspired
about what you do, or
all the time,
or just hyped on your shit?
Both. And so
selling mixtapes hot. Just
yeah,
shit is fire.
exactly. Just
Yeah.
so then when there's times where like we feel, you know, like the jobber, or, you know, like it's just whatever, or we're just like, geez, I'm just like powering through whatever it might be. Like for me, sometimes it's music or auditions.
Well, all the times it sounds like.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, it consumes a big part of your life.
Oh yeah, it does. But I think it's important to remember that that like even when we're not feeling inspired to, like, because some people, and I'm, you know, we've both seen this, like people will only come and like they'll come to the studio and sort of like dilly dally and then just like, oh, I'm just not feeling it today, and they're not doing anything.
Oh, I love those people.
That's beautiful.
They know when to stop.
That's a beautiful way of looking at it. I think sometimes.
Yeah, and they dress way cleaner. Yeah.
I'm glad you feel that way. I think that's also what holds some people back, is like if you don't do anything unless you're inspired, you're doing everything in like fits and spurts versus like keeping a steady burn. And so I think it's good for people to know that like art is not always coming out of like I feel great and love what I'm doing, like headspace, that it's, you know, oftentimes coming out of like, well, this is what I'm doing and it's what I'll be doing for the next 4 hours.
Well, I guess that's what I was getting at. Like it seems like there's like the cliche where like you know, artists like Basquiat or like Van Gogh, like, you know, has to be tormented to make it. It's always theatrical. And then the other flip side of the coin is like you're just on a constant like Xanax drip of just like, oh, everything's so amazing, this greatness just flows out of me, these masterpieces. But it's really like this middle area, like at least for me, like it's very like I mean, it's exciting for me, but like I could imagine from an outside perspective this like this dull just little blob in a box that just kind of bounces from one corner to another. And now that I have an assistant, I'm just bouncing around him and on top of him, color that area, you know. And it's very sobering and quiet, and yeah, I'd say it's very boring. It's a very, as my mom would call it, sedentary lifestyle. Low excitement. I think the most exciting things are what's in my paintings and of course what we do behind closed doors. But yeah, I think that's how I like my life these days.
Well, I'm happy to hear it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna change gears real quick.
Yeah.
How have you, you know, I think this is another thing we've both seen people in school tormented by, is navigating like, do I hold on to my work? Do I sell my work? Like what, you know, so how have you for yourself navigated that during the last 2 years? And also, I guess before then, but largely like during getting your MFA.
Oh, that's a tough one because there's like so many different outlooks on that. I mean, we have the saying that I heard, like a vicious seller that just relentlessly just sells and just the money stacks. And there's always the saying, it takes money to make money.
Right.
So it's like one of my good friends, Jimmy, said, like, it's just, you know, for a lot of the professors, they encourage us, don't sell anything, just hold on to it, it's going to need it. And I'm starting to realize why that's true, but sometimes it sounds like, what do you just want me to be buried with all of this shit? Like, what's going to happen to it, you know? But I do agree that like know where it's going. And if, I mean, of course, if you need money, I'd say definitely take it. And when I say need money, I mean like, well, you can't pay your rent. You don't, it's a question of like, do I eat at Trader Joe's or do I like try to steal something from Ralph's? Yeah. You know, even though probably Trader Joe's is easier to shoplift from. Noted. But yeah, so that if you're having those type of thoughts and it's not just for fun and shits and giggles, if it's for like, I really want to eat some good, like, you know, some good bread and I can afford the good bread, then sell the fucking drawing, you know, get the good bread. But I mean, I think that's the concept of greed too. Yeah. Like, I think greed can also come from fear of being poor. Yeah. You know, once you get money, it's like, well, I need to do whatever it takes to not go back to where I was. Yeah. So, you know, well, and poor means different things to different people. But it means a broad
Yeah.
image when you say the word to most.
Yeah.
Not rich.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
well, and neither of us are in a position where like our parents have not paid for our education.
I'd say the best advice is get really proper documentation of your work. I mean, everyone mostly has iPhones that are at least 12 and up.
Yeah.
From what I see, they're better phones than I have. I have a terrible phone, but I'm always asking people, can you take a photo of it because you have a nice phone? Like the phones that are out right now, the technology can document things proper. If they're small, like scan it. But as long as you have proper documentation of your work,
and you know who has it.
Well, I'm not really talking about that. Like the proper documentation of the work is to be used to spread the word, whether it's through social media.
Right.
Not that it's existing as much, but for print, those type of things are really important, or is just important as the physical itself is the work reaching people, like the awareness of the work.
Right.
Because if you could have an amazing painting, and if it's not online and you sell it to someone and they don't put it online, it's not gone. I mean,
it's just sort of like,
whenever they die or you become popular, they'll sell to someone,
right?
Or maybe not, but like the chances of it being seen are slim, and that matters to me a lot. So people seeing my work is very important. So I would encourage people to document it, and yeah, I wouldn't sell. If you're like 16 to 21, I wouldn't sell those works, because I don't think the question is even selling when you're that age. I think the big question for me when I was leaving undergrad is, where's the trash can? Like where can I throw these things away? Because I'm not taking them back to Los Angeles.
Right. And your paintings are enormous.
Not all of them, especially
true.
not at KCA, because there's a lot of class assignments. And the funny thing is, and when it's not even funny, the how blessed I am.
You could get in closer to this
is that when I went to visit KCAI not too long ago, and maybe it's just like the janitorial staff, but my cubby still had the drawings there. I was like, it's been 2 years, you didn't clean this stuff out. So I gifted them to one of my friends that I was like, oh, I'm still in the cubby.
That's nice of you.
Yeah, it's like 11 pieces.
Oh.
Yeah, and he felt so bad. He came back to LA and gave a few of them
that's true.
back to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't throw anything away that you make leaving high school and in undergrad, even if they're really not wins for you. They'll probably be wins for you later. Because when I was talking to the high school students, I was looking back through all of the drawings that my mother, thankfully for her, salvaged. And I was like, wow, this is gold. Like, where's this other one that I did? And I was like, oh, that was that night that I was like, fuck this shit. And I wish I never did that. So yeah, save all those, because they'll at the very least sentimental value, but at most, like, I know it's like, I mean, maybe it is just me, but like people would always like, when you have your retrospective, it'll matter. And I'm like, yeah, that's never gonna happen, but it might happen. So I wish I would have saved more things.
Yeah.
So yeah, always believe in yourself, that if people are saying that you're gonna be president, you might. And don't throw things away that you make.
Okay, there we go.
That you make.
Yeah.
Take out the trash, but yeah, things that you draw and stuff, even like the doodles in the notepad in class, those could all fall right into like a nice book of like, thoughts.
Indeed.
Yeah.
As you've been doing this program, how have you navigated, like, because I bring this up because I know you well enough to know that I see that you find time to be applying for grants and residencies and scholarships. Like, what is your approach to those things that are like school adjacent, but not required for school, but important?
I think I only really applied to one residency, which I haven't gotten, which was Skowhegan.
Because was the last one someone nominated you for it?
Yeah, all of my scholarships have been nominated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I still feel like I'm bad at rolling dice and winning big. Like, I don't gamble. So whenever I do apply for something, I never get it. But if I work whenever I work really hard and just like open my eyes and whoa, who put this here?
But that's good.
Yeah, but I'm not expecting it at all.
It's always like a pleasant surprise.
It's not a surprise, but what is not the word? It's not a surprise, but it's a blessing.
All right.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Maybe I'm using the wrong words here, but in MFA programs, I assume UCLA is like a lot of them, you choose advisors, right? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
How have you gone about choosing your advisors?
Well, when I first got there, I was like, well, I'll just choose everybody in painting. Makes sense. I'm a painter. I got accepted for painting. It's a good way to do it. But then you start meeting other people doing our reviews, which is kind of just like this big speed dating event that we have at the end of a quarter, where we get to meet other advisors from different departments. In UCLA, it's photography, new genres, ID, which those two are like the artists of the future. Ceramics, sculpture. I think that's it. Okay. Sorry if I forgot another one, but I think that's it. And so you meet the other professors from those departments, and also they're just around so much. It's such a small world. You know, you see your professors at a gallery show. Not as small as Kansas City. I would see them at, you know, the grocery store. They're looking all bummy, and it's like, oh, that's our dean. Yeah, but yeah, I learned that in my second quarter that it was good to get a different set of eyes from a different practice in order to open up new things. So when I started working with photographers, and some of the new genres people, they recommended things or saw my work from a different lens that opened me up to having a greater appreciation for things outside of a painter's lens.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Feel free to stay closer to the mic.
I think I'm pretty close.
That's perfect.
Oh,
that's great.
Just the hunchback of Notre Dame. I'll just move my chair closer. Yeah. Okay. How have you, okay, so MFA programs can be very intense and rigorous, and people can burn out depending on. Oh yeah, I'm burnt out. That's why I'm here in Maine. It's like a wellness retreat. Yeah, I was burnt before I got there. I was burnt out from KCAI. I think burnt out is just like
comes with the territory.
I mean, it's just I've learned to have a thick skin. Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
Well, I mean, if you were to burn someone with our skin, it would hurt. But if the skin is thicker, it wouldn't. It would take a while for you to feel it.
How have you like practiced self-care through this MFA program to like keep it moving?
Started dating you, and you're full of these routines that have helped me fear bread and cheese and ice cream and cold water.
Out of the bag.
Yeah. So
choose your partners wisely.
Yeah, I think so. They don't call it partner for nothing.
It's true.
Yeah,
that is true.
Yeah, partner in care.
You've TA'd a few times.
Yeah.
What have you, like, if somebody was entering an MFA program and they're like, what do I need to know about TAing? What's that like? What should I do to be like, what is the advice that you would have?
Well, I was terrified of it before I did it. You know, anything that have to do with administrative or teaching that's just outside of like being like an introverted artist in your own thing. Not saying that I'm introverted. I think I'm quite extroverted. But I feel that anything that had to do with like lecturing someone in front of a lot of people, like whatever you see in a movie, I was like, well, I don't know how to do that. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if it's like shades of autism creeping up, but I'm just like, oh, that's definitely out of my wheelhouse. So I tried to avoid TAing as much as possible. During the first year, I was fortunate enough to win a fellowship that came with a generous stipend to go to school for free and also have a wage to live and create my projects. So I avoided TAing for the whole year of whole first year of graduate school.
Mhm.
When it came to the second year and that fellowship ran dry, I was
Buckle up.
I was for some reason they made me TA for, they didn't make me, but for some reason I was given the opportunity to TA for printmaking. And I'd never made a print in my life. They just I guess they connected, since my work's so graphic, that
Right. They said you
he
must
must
know
be
how
a
to.
master printmaker.
You're right.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what they said. I said, no, I've never made a print. And the look on one of the professor's face when I told him that was, oh, this is going to be exciting.
And it was.
Well, thankfully I got saved by the UC strike. So I really didn't have
that's
to
right, I
TA printmaking.
forgot.
Yeah. But I learned that it is very demanding, since you just have to be mentally present with people for
Totally.
a school day in undergrad in a class is like 6 hours. Like each class normally lasts 6 hours. So over 6 hours, you just have to be mentally present. That means for me, someone who likes to daydream and ponder of what the future will be and what I have to do back in the studio, it's just, oh, hey, younger person with lots of hopes and dreams and energy. And you have to it's like babysitting with intellectual words.
Yes.
Yeah, just mentoring them, but it's a chance is learning from them, because I think you learn more from someone that's a decade younger than you, because they are in tune with what's going on now. So there's lots of things that I steal from these younger artists, whether it be like pop cultural references, styles of dress. Those are all making their way into my paintings, and so I look at it now as a blessing to be able to go TA.
It's like culture exposure.
Yeah, always look at like obligation as like oh, like what can I get out of this? That sounds very, what's the word?
There was the okay, I just finished that Uta Hagen Respect for Acting book, and I think she
Right.
said geez, what was it? It was like what is something, instead of framing things as what wouldn't I do or won't I do, but like what do I get to do? What, like what opportunity is there?
Yeah, just everything. Like with this interview, it's like, wow, like how many other couples are just having a podcast together? I think it's a testimony of like there is hope in the modern romance.
We'll reach out to the New York Times Modern Love any day now. Okay, we're gonna switch gears, and if you don't want to answer these questions, you don't have to.
Oh. Goody. Oh God.
What's it like dating me?
Is that a question?
Don't joke.
I mean, it's I'm looking for one of those it's divine.
It's very generous.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would say part of the reason you have the amount of sort of like confidence and like stability in your painting is because you have like succeeded in another area previously. So we got questions about that area.
Oh, well, let's get on with it.
Okay. Well, people who are listening aren't going to know. Can I explain it?
Sure.
So Nehemiah used to be a graffiti artist. Well, I mean, he's still capable. So like,
yeah.
I
think I gave it a shot a couple months ago. And
it's true. Yeah. He did for a 35-year, is it 35-year reunion?
30-year reunion.
30-year reunion.
Mm-hmm.
So Ralph would like to know, when'd you stop? Why'd you stop?
2017, and it was just time.
All right. I liked the phrasing of this question a lot. They asked, what was the transition like from MSK to MFA?
That's pretty good. I think I was.
Yeah, I was like, when I saw the dancing of that language, I was like, okay, that's a That's a beautiful way of saying it.
Yeah, I think I was talking to my friend Pat about that when they were saying like UCLA is like the MSK of graduate schools.
That's very cute. Very sweet.
I mean, the transition never stops. You know, I'm from Los Angeles, and I have all of people who I would call my family here, non-blood related, and there is this fandom that's still strong, apparently, about things that I did in my adolescence that I've learned to become proud of as they become more historical and archived.
Yeah. Well, I will also say I'm very glad you told me, because there is a fandom, and
Yeah,
every
it's
now and
super
then
nerdy and cool.
we're walking down the street and grown men come up and treat you like Santa Claus. And if I didn't know about it, it would be very strange.
Yeah, and
it's really sweet. Like, everybody's very respectful. Like, everybody's really kind. It just,
well, not everybody, but yeah.
Well, from what I've seen, everybody's been really nice and just like stoked to like see you and stoked on what you're doing now, when, especially if they didn't know what you're doing now. And I think for anyone listening who is a painter, who might, because I know that some people who don't know that about you look at your paintings and they're like, but how do you make them so big? Because your paintings, like the series you're doing right now, is what, like 10 by 8 feet?
No, they're roughly 7 feet tall by 14 feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So longer than so 14 by 7 feet.
Yeah.
But because you have the background of doing graffiti, like, while it's still obviously like very labor intensive and like intense what you're doing, it's not as foreign as somebody who might have like only been doing, 11 by 17 paintings previously. Like, your brain thinks in like large scale because of that background, or maybe vice versa. You were already thinking that way, and so you were doing graffiti.
Yeah, I mean, I got into art, like my own discovery was through comic books, and I just always wanted to see them larger than just this. So that's probably what led to,
hence the sponsor.
doing them outside. Yeah, it's one of my favorite artists, Todd McFarlane. So yeah, I wanted to do them larger. And yeah, so adapting to a studio practice, that is a question that came up with my professors. Like, why are you doing it so big? Like is it because if it's not good, make it big? If it's not good, big, make it red.
Oh, right.
And it's like, no, it isn't just because I'm trying to overcompensate for a small penis or something like that. It was just because this size feels natural to me, or even quite small. And I know that when I was at KCAI, I was making paintings that most of them were 6 by 8 feet, 6 by 9. And I was like, I know when I will go to graduate school, I want to like level up the size a little more.
Yeah.
And even now in graduate school, I'm like, man, it would be great to do them a little bit taller than 7 or 8 feet, because my ceiling only goes up that high. So I definitely want to make some that are, in the 10-ish, 12-ish
tall
foot. Yeah, because so I can do life-size figures. And also I do a lot of street scenes behind the figures, whether
like facades, like
building,
like,
storefronts.
Yeah,
it would be great to show the roof of them into the sky. So I'm still, maybe for thesis I might pull off one that way.
Yeah.
But
the immersive experience.
Yeah, but yeah, for everyone listening that is a fan of what I did as a kid, I appreciate the love. And
I do love you.
And I love it too. And I love that I carved out a page in the history of that subgenre of art. And I'm proud to be one of the boys.
You should
and
be.
For all the boys still doing it, I'm proud to be on the team.
Thank you for that, Steph Curry.
Yeah.
That wasn't, who was it? There was somebody recently I was watching NBA interviews with that I was like, wow, what a stellar interviewee. Okay, I know some of these questions will come up and people will go like, but how do you transport these giant paintings?
I mean,
you roll them up.
I mean,
you put them in.
I do not drive. And I barely just started.
I didn't even know we were going to go there with this.
And I barely just started getting a support group of people that believe in me enough to do errands like that for me, to do my bidding. Is that what it says? Yeah, I barely have grown an influence to have people do my bidding. So for the longest, especially at the beginning when I moved to LA before I met you, someone with a car,
And a license.
and a license,
and a safe driver.
Yes, I would oftenly be spotted on the streets of Los Angeles walking from an art store with a gigantic 10-foot roll of canvas on my shoulder.
Paul Bunyan style.
Yeah, and a backpack like a Ninja Turtle full of supplies. And I still do. There's a couple art stores near the studios.
Sometimes you do mission it without me or
Mission
anyone
to
else
Home
in the program.
Depot.
And it's impressive. I'm always like, wow, that is,
it's quite ceremonial.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. And especially now that I can afford to pay for those things, it's just, it feels good to get things done yourself, and you have more of a care with the materials because you know what it took to get it,
Totally. Yeah.
If everything came easily, after I get back from one of those missions with a roll of paper or canvas on my back, when I put it on the wall, there's a sense of appreciation and achievement that already happened, of the journey that it took to get the canvas from point A, which is like Playa Vista, to point B, which is like Culver City,
without a car,
which
is impressive.
Very far.
Yeah, it is quite far, quite impressive. Okay, and then when you're sending them places, if they're unstretched, you roll them and package them safely in tubes, and they go places. I say this because I know listeners of the podcast, and I know listeners, I'm going to get emails like, but how do these giant paintings get places? Does he have to use?
Surprised if you got a bunch of emails about how does he roll these things.
I think you'd be surprised.
Yeah,
but it's true. These are the kinds of questions that come up.
Well, it's one thing you just don't know how to do. It always feels super ghetto whenever I like make a tube myself.
But you make them nice.
Well, now Grant makes them, my
That's
assistant,
true.
which I'm thankful to
Bless
have.
Grant.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, to tube something like if it's 7 feet by 14 feet canvas, you roll it the small way, so it's 7 feet.
Mm-hmm.
You're taking like concrete tubes from Home Depot, which are half the size of 7. They're like 3.5 feet each, and then you're duct taping them together like you're connecting like a silencer to a gun with tape. And then you're taking these random tops that don't belong on the sides of concrete tubes and just duct taping those to the ends until.
Very interesting that you brought up the silencer reference, but go on.
Well, just to give a visual of like when you connect a silencer to a gun.
I played video games.
Oh,
I understand.
Yeah. So you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do. It was just funny. I didn't expect that from you.
Yeah. So it just looks really ghetto. And I know you were with me the last time we brought one of those giant things to UPS, and the workers are already doubting, like, this isn't gonna.
It was like bringing a torpedo into a.
Yeah, you're like, what are you shipping? And they're like, this isn't gonna fit. And I was like, it fit the last time. That's what you gotta. That's what you gotta tell them. If you ever shipping something that is too big for a ship, just tell me it fit the last time. Remember that other guy before you? Was it your boss?
Ladies, Nehemiah's got some advice.
Oh, I know that went to the bedroom.
No, I'm kidding.
Oh,
but it could. Okay, lovely. This was all very thorough, I feel. He paints in acrylics mostly. Sometimes
oils. Then I have a what is it? Nervous breakdown. Yeah, I don't adapt well to oil. But everyone says it looks great when I do it, so I'll probably do it some more. I bought some new ones, and I'll probably open them.
Next time you're in the mood to have a meltdown, you're like, things are going too smooth. Let's shake it up.
Yeah. We'll see. Get the palette knife out, Sylvester Stallone style.
How do you recommend people go about pricing their work?
I like the metric pricing, which is just height and width added together inchwise, and then multiply it by 60.
$60?
60 the number.
To find out what?
To find out how much something should cost.
Right. But 60 the number being for dollars, and then like the height time. The height
and width. So this way and this way.
I understand. Times 60.
Inchwise. So if it's 12 inches and 8 inches. You add it together, you get 20.
Multiply it together.
Multiply it by 60.
Oh, you do the 20 plus 60, not 72.
I do the equaled height and width multiplied by 60. The metric prices. And that just seems fair and square. Someone taught me that, and I didn't ask him why 60, but it just sounds good. And that's what I do.
Yeah, no adjusting for inflation.
No.
I'm only asking that because I know people panic over how to price their work.
I just told you how, and
well, now you know.
And it should be it makes sense to me.
I think it's great. No. I'm asking because I know that people unravel over this sort of thing.
As do I when it gets into like the works, like I said, when I had a panic attack with the oils.
Yeah,
and the ones,
I remember.
Yeah, with like the larger works, I mean, pricing by vibe does seem a little smarter if the metric prices don't equal out. And then of course you have to factor in like if you're, because I paint unstretched, so I'm not factoring in the studio cost of like a stretcher, even though on a couple pieces I have stretched them, and then I have, you know, counted in, well, this stretcher cost me $500 to have someone build.
Right.
Yeah, but since I mainly just do them unstretched, usually just height, width, add it together, multiply it by 60, rounded to the nearest solid
reasonable number.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Or, as I've heard you say, sometimes price to sell. You know, depending on
that is a price to sell. I think that should be price to sell.
Delightful.
That's a fair price.
I agree.
Yeah.
What would you like to hear a future episode of this podcast about?
Well, that person we met during the barbecue last night would be great. The child psychologist.
The school psychologist?
Still a child psychologist, right?
True.
Yeah.
That's what you'd like to hear about?
I was the one that recommended get them on the pod.
I mean, I felt the same way.
Yeah, I think people that you meet in places you've never been is super exciting.
Amazing.
You went super internal, and now it's good to go the opposite, and then maybe back. Yeah.
If we hadn't met her if you hadn't met her and we hadn't had that conversation last night, what would you have said?
I know it would have been cool to like, I was like, maybe you can get Rabbi on.
Oh,
or
nice.
Yeah, or Devin. Devin would be good. Maybe good to have a duo one with like both, since they're friends. Like it would be a good like.
Oh, that'd be so cute.
Yeah,
they're such nice friends.
Yeah, that would be good.
Maybe I should just have all the boys sit down, them two and Lars. We can really make it like a talk show.
I think Lars could do his own.
Lars could do his own.
Yeah, because Lars's work is like
very social.
It's a lot to, well, it's not about what it's about, just it has a lot to unpack, where I think it deserves a focus on the work, whereas I feel Devin and Rabbi, even though I don't know them that well, it seems like the personalities, and since they're together a lot,
totally,
it seems like they could regale the public about adventures.
That's very true.
Yeah.
And Devin's definitely very funny and delightful, and Rabbi is a hysterical storyteller. Like Rabbi really knows how to like bring you along on the journey. So I agree. Very good. Well, find Nehemiah on Instagram. His name is Nehemiah Cisneros. It will be linked to in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you for being on. This is very fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go for a hike.
We're going for a hike.